Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live July 1st. Happy July, everybody, 2020. And today I'm so glad and happy to have my good friend and co-host David Carr joining us to talk about a lot of different things. One, I think the one thing that we're most excited about sharing in this story or this show is those photographers that inspire us through their photographers, or through their photographs, or their actions, or a combination of both. And yeah, I gotta do a little tease, and then David, I'll let you talk.
Okay, it's no problem.
I've got something photography related in this little running backpack, which David Carr and I were just talking. It doesn't look that small, but this is one of those little backpacks that's made for like gel and one jacket. And I'll be honest, I've never really actually run far enough to justify its use. But I have something in here that I have am currently reviewing, and it's blowing my mind how nicely it fits in this tiny little running backpack. Plus, update on my laptop. The Dell did arrive, the new one, the one that has a B key that works. How do I feel about it? How's it running Lightroom? I'm going to talk about that. Plus, I got the 28-200 on the desk and lots more. So, there, that's the tease. You all are excited about this. And I'm going to do what I did for last week's show, and that is put little timestamps after we're done that allow you to skip to the sections you want. Like maybe you want to skip to the section where David Carr gets to talk. David, how are you doing?
Maybe they want to skip past that, you know? You should have the edited version, the non-director's cut. No, I'm doing well. Just, I cannot believe it's July. I know that's kind of the thing everybody says. Every time a new month comes
around, I'm right there with you.
I mean, but it is kind of crazy, because we always joke in our house, like, well, it'll be Christmas before you know it when July comes around, and it's like, ha ha. But then when Christmas time comes, you're like, well, July just felt like it was 2 months ago. So yeah, the year is flying by, which might be a good thing given this type of year. Although there's nothing that says December 31st is the end of the craziness. But hopefully 2020 will at least be a very interesting memory and one that passes, and we can move on to better things.
Let's hope we learn some lessons from this.
Well, I think we have and will. I mean, it's I heard somebody saying the other day, there's so many things that have happened throughout history where unfortunately we had to get to a really tough place where, we should have been warned, we should have followed the warnings, but we never, as human beings, we just don't until things get really dire. And then we're like, oh, I guess we should probably take this seriously next time. So hopefully, because there will be another pandemic someday, and hopefully this will be, just getting us a little bit more prepared for that. So
yeah. I did see a funny tweet the other day that said, what if the saying hindsight is 2020 is totally a different meaning than what we all have been thinking all of this time? So
that's funny. Okay. Yeah.
Clever.
I could see that. Yeah. Well, I'm ready for it to be hindsight. That's for sure.
Yeah. We got a couple comments. You're looking a little pixelated right now, David. I think this is going to happen sometimes, or maybe somebody in your house is downloading a giant file. I don't know.
No, you know what? Let me turn off Dropbox, because that usually will. I didn't realize that was on. And Backblaze, I'm going to pause.
Okay. All right. So you still sound fantastic.
Well, good. I mean, as long as you got my voice.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So quick check in on stuff that has gone out in the last week or two from both of us. I'll start and I did a Monday Minute. It was my longest one yet. It's when I had this genius idea of these quick little videos, non-original genius idea, I was like, I'm going to try to keep it to about a minute. And the first couple were around 2 or 3 minutes. And then there was a couple that were at 5 or 6. And then this one is almost 10 minutes. And I'm not going to apologize because it's about printing. And I take you through the steps of just how easy it is to get big prints on your wall. So it's definitely worth the 9 minutes and 17 seconds or something like that worth of your time. So go take a look at that. I'm going to follow up with some additional kind of print tutorials in the not so distant future, because Bay Photo has these newer print styles that are crazy high DPI. And I want to print some at those crazy high DPIs and see how much of a difference does it make. I mean, we always hear this number of 300. Oh, 300 is like perfect quality. If you can't hit 300, your print's going to look terrible. And that's just not true. But I'm also curious, if we go to these really high resolution prints, what do we see? What's it look like? So
yeah, that's a whole realm that I'm just so not well versed in. And the way I think, even like doing something like this tile project I've been doing, I think more as an artist than I do as a carpenter. So it's more visual and more just looking to things look right. Not are they technically mathematically correct. And that's where I get stumped with resolution and how to print properly, because I just want to print it. I don't want to think about all that stuff. And unfortunately you kind of have to if you want to get it done right.
But, I mean, what I say to folks in the video is if you've got a modern camera, last couple of years, and you haven't cropped it to crap, you're probably just fine to print nice and big. Nice and big being up into the like 20s to 30-inch size.
Sure.
Beyond that, then you should start checking in on your math and things of that sort to make sure that you're not going to be wasting your money ordering some 40 by 60 when you realize that you cropped your image so much. But for most of us, they're going to look just fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Toby, do you want me to leave the studio and come back so that will that reestablish a better connection?
I don't know. Never tried that. You want to try that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing the YouTube feed and I am quite blurry.
It's interesting. Last week I was watching back for a few minutes to put in the timestamps, and I noticed that I was quite blurry, and you looked and sounded great. Yeah, why don't you do that real quick? Restart the browser.
I'll click leave studio. Yeah, we'll just start over. Okay, I'll be back.
No worries.
After these messages.
Why David's coming back here in just a second. It's going to take him like 5 seconds. I'll say that I also put out a Tuesday tip. So Pen members, you got a tip on keeping your camera dry in the rain and reasons why you would want to shoot in the rain in the first place. And let's bring them back in. I think you look better.
Well, thanks.
Yep. There you go. Yeah. All right. And so I was just sharing that I sent out a Tuesday tip yesterday on shooting in the rain and ways to keep your camera dry. And I talk about different things. It almost turned out to be a little bit of an advertisement for Think Tank, because if you really are going to be shooting in the rain often, their camera cover is the most usable, most user-friendly, and the most protective. I mean, certainly you can have one of those little plastic rain sleeves in your bag, but when you actually need to use your camera, those things are just a giant pain in the butt. They're flopping in front of your lens or they're flopping in front of your eyepiece and you just can't see it all. So you should have one of those emergency covers in your bag at all times. But if you really are going to be shooting in the rain, it's worth taking a look at those Think Tank bags. But I talk a little bit about that in that Tuesday tip. And if you're watching this and you're not a Pen member, we're running a fantastic discount for new members. You can join for a year at just $24 for a year. You get access to hundreds of hours of educational content. I saw somebody advertise the other day actually, it's one of the photographers that I'm putting on my inspirational list, advertising being able to connect for various services of his. And he is a fantastic photographer. And this isn't to slight him at all, but the costs of kind of getting his ear for a few minutes and his expertise was very high. And I look at what we offer with the videos, the community access, the access to photographers and the monthly image reviews, as well as what David, you and I do on this show. Right. And I'm just very proud of the value and the level of service that we provide.
The thing about Pen that I really love is just this sense of, it really feels like a close-knit community. And I would venture to say that, if 500 more people joined it, I think it would still have a closeness to it because of the way we interact with one another. And it's kind of like it feels like everyone's got each other's back. It's not all this competitiveness and clawing at each other for who's better and who knows more. It just in photography, there's enough of that. You and I have talked about the snarkiness and there's a lot of just egotistical nonsense. And so, there are a lot of photographers who just want some help. They just want to help figure it out, and so I just love having a community where people can ask a question that might to them seem dumb, but to the rest of us, we're like, no, it's not a dumb question. Like, ask the questions, we want to help each other.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. All right. And so we're going to just move on. If you're watching this and you are a Pen member, just give it a quick thumbs up. Let people know that 1, the show is decent, and 2, you value your Pen membership. David Carr, I know you've been busy tiling. I saw another behind the scenes picture, beautiful backsplash, or no,
Yeah.
I guess tiling in a bathroom. Is that called a backsplash?
No, the backsplash would be like in the kitchen, usually over the
Okay,
countertop. This is just a shower. I'm doing 3 showers, and
Wow.
I'm pretty much I've determined I'm not doing this again. I know
No?
how to do it. It's just it's so messy and so tedious and slow. And I just those are 3 things that I don't enjoy in life. So
Yeah.
but it is looking good. But it's art, and you can't it's that's a type of thing where when it dries, it's done. You can't move it. You can't just shift it around and like put a little shim in it and fix it. If it's not straight, it's not straight. I mean, you can tear it out, but it's a total pain. So it's very tedious, and I'm enjoying it. And it was a nice way for me to make a little extra money during this time when, photography jobs aren't really coming in like they should be. But it at least gave me a little bit of time to work on something and a little money, but I'm not doing it again. Okay. Don't ask anybody, nobody.
All right. Good to know. I wonder, are there any parallels with photography in this process? I mean, it certainly sounds like it's funny you say, there's no transform tool after the fact.
Exactly. Yeah.
You are. Yeah.
I mean, you know what, to be honest, I mean, all joking aside, cause I do a lot of interior, just, I guess, remodeling. I've done 90% of my house. I've remodeled myself, and I do enjoy it. And I realized, because I've been doing that for years, and I realized when I started getting into photography, the thing that I think was really appealing about photography to me was whatever that muscle is in my brain that likes construction and building and remodeling. I was able to flex that in photography because it's composition. You look at a room and you're like, okay, you don't want to put this picture way up in the corner. That would look dumb. You want to have it rule of thirds almost. You want to have it like there's certain places where things look right. And there's certain lighting that things look better in, and there's certain colors. And so it's a lot like photography. It's just, you're designing a space and trying to make it look appealing. And so I use those same thought processes when I'm editing a photo or shooting a photo. Is just like, where do things need to be, and like at what brightness and what color, and just so it's kind of fun to see the parallel.
Yeah. Cool. Good. And I got to apologize real quick. I asked the chat room to do something, but I did say welcome to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us live, having you here to keep us in check. Let us know when our feed is blurry. And also remind us that it is Canada Day. So if you're watching this in Canada, and I know at least John is up there in, John, I think you're in, I was going to say Nova Scotia, but I don't think you're in Nova Scotia. You're somewhere up north. So that's safe.
I did not know it was Canada Day. That's good to know.
Yeah. So welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, we're going to dive into the part of the show that we love. We have a large number of images this week, though, and we are going to try to keep this a little bit shorter. That's something else I noticed last week as I went through and put the timestamps, and I really love being able to give the feedback that we give. But I also don't love the show necessarily being 2+ hours, because that turns some of our audience off. So we're going to be a little bit faster as we dive into the image review section today. And do we have, look at this, we have 2 hummingbirds from different photographers. And since we just landed right here on Sue's first, let's just get started with this. And you know what? Let me just solo the screen. And there we go. All right.
Nice.
So first up is Sue, and Sue had sent in 2, and then realized that she only wanted one that didn't have the hummingbird so centered and so tight. And you had the second one was this one with a little bit more space off to the left. And Sue, I think this is a lovely shot.
Yes.
We've got good detail on our hummingbird. We have eye contact with a little bit of a catch light, really sharp through all of these feathers. And then lovely fall off in the background where it just kind of becomes soft and green. And gosh, I have very little helpful advice to add other than to say, nice job.
Yeah.
What do you think, Carr?
Me too. I mean, I would. I don't know if that's a Southernism. I used to could. No, I might crop it a little bit, just maybe as a vertical or a square or something, because I feel like, and I do love that it's looking off to the left into some empty space, but I felt like maybe it was a little too much empty space. But as far as the processing, the shot, the bird, all the bokeh, everything is great. So it's really, it's kind of like the sky's the limit at that point as far as cropping. Maybe just the way I'm seeing it, I might bring out the shadows a little bit, but I mean, it'd just be a little bit of soft tweaking. There's not a whole lot to do here. It's a really gorgeous shot, Sue.
Yep, very nicely done. I like the crop, the vertical, especially if you're going to post on Instagram. This is a nice crop. But even if you're not, one of the things I noticed, and it's very minor, but let's just hit reset for a sec. You just have this little bit of a yellow blip in this corner, and I think if you want to leave this crop, I would just clone that out. But otherwise, really nice job. Nice. Since we're right here, let's jump right over to Pam's Hummingbird. And let's go, I think, So Pam, we've talked about this. We need bigger images because at this view, it's kind of hard to make judgments. And then when we zoom in, the style you sent us is just small enough that it doesn't look as good as it could. Now, maybe this is as big of the version as you had, because I remember you talking about cropping it at some point in the past. And when we zoom in, I'll just say that it looks over sharpened. And I don't know if you use topaz, and I'm not sure if that's coming through clearly for you, David. I know you're.
I could tell something was a little crunchy on the edges. I mean, I really love the shot, but I felt like that might be a little bit, just a little too over sharpened.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. We've got really lovely placement here, Pam. I love this with the space and these leaves and the light coming through the leaves. All very, very nice. But the sharpening has accented the kind of it's haloed is I think the best term to use around the hummingbird, and it just doesn't look quite as natural. And it looks like the sharpening has happened after you've put on the virtual matte, maybe even because we have a little bit of distortion in the corners where those lines are. So you really want to watch out for that. You want this to be nice and clean. And I think this would be an image where you could do some sharpening to the hummingbird itself, but really make sure you're not doing any to the background, because what has happened is you've brought in a lot of you've kind of increased some noise there in the background that just doesn't need to be. It's a nice, lovely, soft background. If you leave that nice and lovely soft, I think it's going to look even a little bit better. Yeah.
And the last thing I would say, because there's really not a whole lot that I would change. I mean, I think that one leaf that goes off to the left, the lower left-hand corner, is perfect.
Yeah.
I just think that's like, you could have just painted that in there like that. It's perfect. And where it lands, I just love it. So very nice shot. I'm very, very impressed with this one, Pamela.
Yep. Very nice. All right, Pam. Thank you. Kevin, you have submitted a car, right? What kind of car is this? I don't know. Mustang? No, it's not a Mustang.
Oh, it's a Camaro.
A Camaro. I just lost, all respect by anybody who likes cars.
That's all right. It's
okay. All right. And I think this is a sunset shot. Yeah, 8:40 p.m. and really quite slick.
Yeah. There's really cool light hitting the car. When you photograph cars, I mean, it's so important to have, because of all the contours and the lines in the body of a car, you have this nice kind of golden light running along the side of that car. And I think it's the beginnings of a great shot. I think there's some more editing you could do to really bring out just a little more oomph to it, because, with an automobile, especially one that's kind of got this kind of prowess to it. And, there's this beauty to cars like this. You really want to make sure the whole image is giving you that. So, I would say if there's a way to make the sky more dramatic, which there is, with color, with, doing some sort of gradient and maybe even affecting the temperature of the sky. Like, there are some ways you could really make this beautiful, like as a whole image, because you have this really great looking car here. And it's so good that you had the headlights on. It's like essential. And I don't know how much you'll be able to get it there right now, Toby, but just seeing a little more of that like pinkish purple in the sky, and just like, to me, that adds a nice bit of drama to it.
Yep. Yep. And also, I know, Kevin, ISO 3200 getting a little noisy, but I don't know if you ran this through a sharpener as well. I mean, we've been really positive about Topaz Sharpen and Topaz Denoise in the last couple of weeks, but you do want to be careful because it looks like this has been processed and pushed a little too far. Like there's a lot of noise in here. And I'm even seeing some speckles up onto the car and onto the hood here as well. So I would look at reprocessing that very carefully. And again, similar to Pam, really making sure that you're not processing it in areas that you don't need it. I would really soften heavy noise reduction in here. Let this be really soft and kind of starting to get out of focus, and really just work the noise reduction and the sharpening on the car itself, trying to find that balance where you're not bringing out any of the noise, but you are accenting the sharpening itself.
Yeah. And the last two things I would say, I mean, if I was really working on this image, I would, there's kind of like this lighter area of dirt or grass or whatever in the bottom right. I would probably try to eliminate that and make it just match the gravel or whatever. It's just an area that is kind of distracting me from that tall grass that's kind of waving there. And then I would maybe clone it out or do something in Photoshop if I was working on it. And then that little hill over the left fender of the car, there is a way to completely remove that and kind of make it look like the mountain behind it is just like fading off into the car. I mean, this is heavy lifting stuff, but these are the things I would do to like finish it off.
Yeah. Yeah. And a commenter, Teresa, said the orange on the wheel is distracting her. I think it's the brake pad or the caliper, whatever you call that thing there. And then also I think we have a turn light here. And so it might be one of those times where you should take multiple shots with lights on and off. And then that gives you the ability to layer them and basically turn on the lights you want and turn off the lights you don't, and also have a little bit of darkening in there. Cool. All right, we're going to move on to something very different. Tanya's got her food for thought shot. And I remember seeing a post from you, Tanya, a week or two ago, or maybe a little further back. What kind of glue is good for gluing lettuce? And I thought, oh boy, here we go. If you haven't seen Tanya's work, it's different than many of our members, which, that right there makes it stand out, and I love. And here you have made a dress out of lettuce, which is quite fantastic.
It's kind of unbelievable. I mean, I don't Tanya has done a lot of these kinds of things, and I'm just kind of like, where do you come up with these ideas? I mean, how do you even think to do that? And then, you think to do it and then actually go through with it and figure it out. Her execution is always really just very professional. It's very seamless. You kind of don't know where reality ends and the Photoshop love begins. It's very a lot of times very seamless, which is rare. I mean, a lot of times a lot of us are using Photoshop just to fix a couple of things and maybe remove like a telephone wire or something from a shot. But Tanya obviously does these composites, and I had her on my podcast back in February or sometime, and we talked a lot about the composites and just such an interesting way to see photography.
Yeah. And I like that point you make that we're not always sure where the reality in the Photoshop line is, and I think that's the mark of well done. I suspect that there isn't that much Photoshop in this. I feel like you really did make a lettuce dress, or maybe you're actually covered by just one tiny piece of lettuce, and somehow you cloned that a million times. But I think it's really well done. I see the edges of lettuce pieces here on the shoulder, and I almost kind of want this to be a single piece. But maybe that adds more to the realism. I don't know. I actually don't have a very strong opinion about it, but I would like to see those softened so they just kind of blend one into the other. And then the one thing that I love the title, Food for Thought, and I think that this is supposed to be like a big ham bone thing, but it's out of lettuce, right? Is that so? I'm not positive that is what you're holding and that's what it's supposed to be. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of looking at that, wondering myself, if it's some sort of head of lettuce. Like, I don't know my lettuce very well. Is that the plural? Lettuces. I don't know. I don't know my lettuces very well, but there's so much about it. It's like, whoa, what is going on? There's a lot of questions you ask about it, which to me is kind of a cool thing. You know, if you can do that in a photo.
Yeah. Tanya says it's a book. Okay. I'm not getting that,
book.
Tanya.
Oh, I see. Okay, it's a book.
But I
okay.
think so.
Huh.
Yeah. I wouldn't have guessed that after many guesses. So if there's something you can do to really make that clear.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, so now that she says it's a book, I'm seeing the gesture of holding a book.
Yeah.
And the two sides, but it almost looked like, yeah, like you said, some sort of, like, I don't know what you called it, a ham bone or something, but it definitely it looked like a round something that kind of just had a section that went up, like it's interesting how you can perceive something differently when you're not aware of what the original intention was. So
yeah, but overall just really, really fun. Love the matching headband to the green. Really
and the lighting. Tanya is very good with the lighting. It's always very well executed in her studio stuff. So hats off.
Yeah. Very nice. Very cool. All right. We're going to move on. Paul Anderson has got a swan here. Let's take that away for a second.
Wow.
And very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very, lovely symmetry. Like, I'd say real world symmetry. Yes, both wings aren't exactly the same, but they are so close to it. And just, I think the composition here is really, really nice. I wonder if we take shadows up just a little bit more. I want some of the swan seems just a bit dingy, and I want to see just a little bit more. Maybe paint on a little exposure and brightening.
Yeah, I was thinking
run through that swan right in that area there. Obviously, the wings are catching the light. They look great, but I think there's room for just a little bit more brightness in the non-sunlit areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you paint that on, of course. Also, if you don't need auto mask, turn it off, because it will sometimes decide what it should paint on. It's not always correct.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've got that on, then of course you can further adjust these and go extreme or something like that, which I have to say that I'm bringing it up almost a full stop of exposure, and I think that's an improvement.
Yeah, I do too. It's tough when you have areas that are just naturally being lit, more than others. In nature, that's just the way it was. But we're always drawn to the face. Obviously, you're not going to see the eyes in this situation. That's okay. But you're always kind of drawn to the face, the mouth. So, it doesn't mean it has to be the brightest thing, but it definitely it doesn't need to fall into so much shadow that you kind of lose, that your eyes keep going back to something other than the head. So,
yeah. And since I took the time to paint on, I went back to the global adjustment and brought shadows down now, actually, because I really love that separation from the background. And when I brought them up, it just started to show more of the background than I wanted. And I just really like, almost kind of, I'm going to say silhouette, but I don't, it is just very different, stands out so nicely from the background. And I added a tiny bit of vignetting too. There's natural vignetting, or Paul, you already added some, I don't know what, but I think I could take it even a little bit further. And it just kind of, the vignette just kind of naturally mirrors the shape of the shape the swan's making. Cool. Yeah. All right.
Great moment.
Thank you, Paul. We've got Katan he sent two. This is, I believe, straight out of camera, or let's say with minor editing. And then with some editing, filled in the gap. So you added 3 ducks or geese. I'm not sure which. So that we have a nice little train, and you made it a much warmer, lovely little scene. And I think this is great.
Yeah, I think that was wise to take advantage of Photoshop or however you cloned those 3 extra ducks or geese, whatever they are, into the, I don't know my birds. I mean, it could be
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I mean, I shouldn't.
Let's stick to waterfowl. There's some sort of waterfowl.
Let's say that. I know the bald eagle. I'm pretty good with that one. Maybe the cardinal, but no. I think it's good to do that. I've done things like this. There was a penguin shot I did where I didn't add any in, but I actually closed the gap between a few because I just didn't want to see them spread out like they were. But so I'm a fan of doing that. I'm kind of wondering. There was a shot we looked at last week of a bunch of camels.
Yep. Walking.
Yeah, and I just loved the simplicity with which we were sort of suggesting. I think Steve really was pushing for this very simple thing. I think you could kind of do a similar thing here where almost like you could lose the dark area above the water and do. I mean, I do love the golden light on the water. I just wanted to see if there's something to play with on a different crop. But yeah, maybe come up there. Really just accentuating, because it's all about these birds at this point. It's not about, I mean, it's the birds on the water, so you get a little hint of the water, but there's not a whole lot else to show, And maybe I would straighten the line of the birds like as more level, just because my eyes want to see things level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, they didn't necessarily look crooked, but then when you start to straighten and you look at the bottom of each bird, you can see that there is room there. It looks a little more natural, especially the bottom of this guy lines up nicely with a little bit straighter. Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool though.
It is cool. And this guy is very close to the edge and he's headed that way. So part of me almost wants to come in a little bit, something like this. I think you could argue either way. This is also one of those images where I think you could Photoshop in pretty easily some additional content to the left if you needed to give yourself more room and keep that lead waterfowl. Yeah. I think cutting out is neat. One thing that I do like is this other little bit of sun that splashes in up here.
I did like that actually.
So I'm going to go back to that, but then I do want you to take out these little buoys.
See, I couldn't even see them as that. Okay.
Yeah. Be careful.
I actually kind of do like having that stripe of black up there or dark. It is cool. That adds a nice.
Yeah.
It's like a different element that it adds to it.
Yeah. Cool. Nice, Katan. I think I'm saying your name right. Jody put this in the pen group because, of course, just posting in the Facebook community is a great way to get feedback from folks. She likes this image a lot, but worried a little bit that it might be too busy. And I just glanced at some of the replies people were sharing, and it did look like the consensus. And I think I agree. It's a little busy.
Yeah.
There's a lot to love here. This far shore with this light and this reflections is pretty nice. And even this curve over here. But before we get to that, we have a lot of this stuff in the foreground that I don't think is helping the shot.
I would agree.
And this is one of those things where, Jody, I know and or hope very strongly that you have some other similar shots from this location, because I don't necessarily know that this is fixable through cropping, because we can, if we come up, it's not bad, but we still have this stuff on the right that just comes out of nowhere, and it's just kind of, it's like poking me in the eye. You could Photoshop that out, but that'd be a good bit of work. It's certainly possible, but it'd be work. More hopefully, as I said, would be having something that is very similar to the shot, but doesn't have as much foreground element.
Right. I'm wondering, I don't know what size the image is, like as far as pixels, but if there's room to crop over, like the crop you just had was fine, but to just lose the stuff on the right and come up and just try to minimize the amount of Photoshop you have to do, but still, because the sky is great. And, this looks fairly HDR to me. It kind of just has that contrast drama to it going on. So, and those can be cool images, but you have to be careful, because if you have so much going on in an HDR image, then it's just like exponential how much is going on, because there's, HDR in and of itself, even with a very simple image, is going to create so much more detail, and sometimes it's too much. So you don't want to have too many other elements in the actual photo along with HDR. So I don't know if it is HDR, but it feels like it. You know,
I agree. And I think it's a lot of for me. It's the clouds that kind of give away that it looks a little bit more HDR-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I think you could do some work up there to back those off and get them to look a little bit softer. So, yeah. And I'm pretty sure, Jody, I think this was on our October workshop in New England that you captured this. I remember this pond. It was one of our very last stops on the last day as we headed to the airport.
Gorgeous.
And, yeah, very, very cool scene. I was going to say one other thing about it, but now I can't remember what it was. So I think we're going to move on. Thank you, Jody. All right. Robert Scott, Azure Adrenaline. And, you know, when people submit to this show, they definitely don't have to have titles. We enjoy them. We do strongly encourage it as part of the monthly image review. That is the image review where you can win a fantastic prize from Bay Photo and, of course, get feedback from professional photographers. And not rushed, you know, not that they, well, yeah, I'll be honest with David Carr and I are we want to keep this at a shorter time frame. So we move through a little bit faster. And that option review that happens once a month is a fantastic deep dive into those images that are picked. And I say all that just to say, I love your title, Robert. I think it's a fantastic play on words, and the color pick, Azure Adrenaline, really, really nice.
Yeah. Man, this is a cool shot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know what I would do because it's got this it's got this thing about it, at least the way I'm seeing it, you know, on my screen. It just feels like it could go in a magazine, or it feels like it's just kind of ready to be delivered. If you were gonna submit it for PPA or something where you're really trying to enter it into a competition and really, you know, and you're up against other competition with similar photos. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a crop that's a little different, maybe coming in from the right a touch and just losing some of the stuff in the, I don't know. I mean, you'll hear me say, I don't know a lot because I literally don't. Like, I'm just thinking out loud, like what would happen if I did this and if I did that, but there's nothing like that's glaringly like, oh, that really needs to be changed, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do like the idea of coming in a little bit from the right, because as much as I love this kind of the back of the breaking wave, it's distracting. It's different than this whole frothing for, and it pulls my eye up here away from him.
Yeah. And
I think we can take that away, or if you really love this crop, then I might just fill it in with a little bit more foam and texture.
Yeah, and that's a very small, that's just a tweak. It's not a like, oh gosh, what were you thinking? You know, it's just if we're really going to fine tune it.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, and I do struggle though. I come here, you know, and then he's centered. They come over here, and I think that works very nicely. We have this diagonal line coming right at us. Yeah. And the only other thing I could see is when I zoom in. So let's accept that crop. Zoom in. It feels a little over sharpened. Face is a little bit noisy. I might try to soften that, the grain there, but that's getting nitpicky. And overall, I think this is a fantastic image. And complementary colors too. This tan boy with a blue background. I think it really stands out nicely there.
Definitely. That is one of the things I've noticed when there's an image that I kind of don't know what to say to do to, like oftentimes it's because the colors are working so well together. Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for good complementary colors, or just kind of the way the colors. That's what you said. The way the colors are working. All right. Kevin's got this lovely sailing photo. Sunset, people on sailboats enjoying themselves. This looks nice.
Yeah.
Let's just do a couple of quick things. What if we can go either way here. I don't know if you have an opinion, David Carr. We can bring it up so that we have a little bit more, bringing the shadows up so we have a little more detail, or we can bring the shadows down so we really are working kind of with silhouettes.
Right.
And right now we're kind of in the middle. And I think it's personal preference. And I'd love to see, chat room chime in. What do you think? Do you like going silhouettes, or do you like having more detail in the subjects, right? Especially in the foreground.
Yeah, I think there's probably a good balance between the two where I wasn't so bothered by the way it was originally shown. I feel like this is one that could stand to be cropped as well.
Yeah.
Maybe to a square, just bring over from the right. Because once you get past that curve of that sail, it just doesn't, there's nothing else that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
That right there to me is, and we always talk about having three. Well, you don't have three boats, but that doesn't really matter because you have three sails. And so it gives you the impression of three things. And there's just and then you get the reflection on the water. There's a really nice balance to that.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's a pleasant little scene. It makes me want to get out on the water,
Yeah, I agree. Same. I think the square crop is really nice, playing around with exactly where you want that to end. And it just, nice balance.
Yeah, I would say this to everybody listening, like just really think about when you're editing, just look at the whole image and just ask yourself, what's the main subject? What's the main thing I want people to look at? And then if there's stuff outside of that that just kind of doesn't really add much to it, you probably don't need, unless it's adding real context. If it's like some sort of grandeur of, like you're in this wide open space and there's something that you really want to like show how big the place looks. But in this case, it was just more water and more tree line, and it didn't seem to add. And this way, it's framed in such a way that like there's two sailboats and there's some people enjoying themselves one evening, out on the water. And that's what you're telling people. That's the story, and you don't need anything else peripheral.
Yeah. Yeah. Roy wondered if a black and white would work well. And we do lose that warm color, but it becomes a very different image. And I think also a strong image that way as well. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you all, everybody who submitted. And I'm not sure we were actually that much shorter than usual. We enjoy looking at your images, giving you some feedback about them. So thank you, everybody who submitted it. If you're watching this, you're not a pen member. Again, it's a fantastic value, and you'll get regular feedback on your images. Yeah. All right. So let's see. We got to talk about some other things. Couple of quick things. Show notes are linked right down below this video. And although I haven't taken the time yet to put the photographers that inspire both David Carr and I into that section, I will shortly after the show, so that those will all be linked there and you can go check out their Instagrams. But this week, David Carr, let me ask you, do you use Google Photos?
I don't. I saw your post, and I don't, just because I'm in the whole Apple universe so much that I just don't. So
that poll ended up being split very close to 50-50. Just a slight, it was like 55 do use Google Photos and 45-ish or so don't. And I imagine, that's probably pretty similar to my audience's kind of split between Android and iPhone, although you can run Google Photos on the iPhone. And I just bring it up because it got a big redesign this week. First off, the icon, that's too bright. You can't see it. The icon is stupid looking now, but that's okay. But when you go into the library section, when you go into the search section, front and center is a map now. And it gives you a little heat map of where you have captured your pictures. And you can zoom out and zoom out and zoom out. So that's kind of fun. If you travel fairly regularly, like I'm lucky enough to do, then you get a kind of cool, super bright, isn't it? Let's try lowering it to that amount. Maybe we just won't show this. Yeah, you kind of see. It just shows you where you've taken a lot of your pictures.
Cool.
And remember, this doesn't have to be just your phone photos. It's very easy to upload to Google Photos your favorites from your Lightroom catalog as well. And that's something that I'm trying to be better about this year, getting those collections when I'm done with a trip and I've edited them and I like 30 of them out of a couple of hundred, or let's be real, a couple thousand. I export them and upload them to Google Photos, and if I've taken the time to tag them with their locations, and it doesn't even have to be super precise. For instance, for a lot of our travels around the Page, Arizona area, Horseshoe Bend and the Slot Canyons, I'll just dump them all right on Page, Arizona. That's close enough for me.
Yeah.
Then they'll show up in Google Maps as well, Google Photos in that map section as well. So I think that's pretty cool. And linked along with this Google Photos update is a interesting project somebody started where you can pick a location and they will just send you kind of randomly one of their favorite pictures they've captured as close to that location as possible. So that's linked. It's from Petapixel. I won't say more about that because we want to keep the show running. But if you're a map nerd like me, I'm talking to like 2 other people out there. It's okay, I know. It's kind of a neat project, and I thought it was a neat idea. So take a look at that. And now I want to dive into this Petapixel. My friend Christian wrote this, and it's about how to take more interesting landscape photos. And I think that it's worth taking a moment to look at because 1, he's got some fantastic imagery. But 2, the number 1 and the one that I want to talk about that I think is the most important, that really serves to strengthen your work, is for landscape photography, is introduce some depth into your photos.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't mean to pick on Jody's image for a minute, but I want to use that as an example because I think that's exactly what we were trying to do there, Jody. You had some foreground elements that you were putting in the beginning of the frame that adds depth and gives you a sense of kind of standing on that pond edge. But just the nature of those elements and the fact that they came up so high and almost kind of intersected with the distant objects was detrimental to the image. And so I do really want people to consider how they can work images so that there is something interesting in the foreground to kind of guide your viewer into the frame, but you also don't want it to be intersecting or running into your distant objects.
Right.
Yeah. And was I going to say one more thing about this? I think that's also for the longest time, I'd say, I don't, people say, oh, I want to do landscape photography. I need a wide angle lens. And I was always like, wide angle lenses aren't great for landscape photography. And unless you know what you're doing and you're putting something really interesting in the foreground, that wide angle lens helps you. And so part of it was me just not being able to do that. So I was like, they're just terrible. And I think I still don't want people to think they're the default choice for a landscape photograph. I think they make it more difficult, but they can make it more interesting.
Right. No, I would agree with that. Okay. I mean, the wide angle lens it's such a, it seems, I think to anybody who's just getting out and trying to do landscape, kind of early on in their photography endeavor, it seems like the wide angle would be the way to go because you want to show like everything you're seeing. But as we always say on the McKay tours, you shoot with this super wide. I have a 14 to 24 lens. If I shoot at 14, like, out in Page, Arizona, it just kind of, everything just kind of gets lost because I'm taking in way too much information. Yeah. Now, if I'm shooting interior stuff, Steve does the real estate stuff. Yep. And even he doesn't really use a super wide. I mean, he'll go wide, but you have to be really careful with those because they can get gimmicky on one end or they can just bring in too much information and you kind of get lost in the photo. So you have to be careful with those, but they're awesome when they can do amazing things. You just have to know when to use them.
Yeah. Well said. All right, let's run through a couple more of these real quick. Isolate elements in the frame. And this is another way to say what I often coach people, and that's anything that's important in your frame, anything that is part of the story, I want you to think of it as being alive and breathing. And if it takes a deep breath, you want to make sure it's got room within that space to not run into anything else. So, he does that in this one. Not only is there depth, but you have this is isolated from this. There's a bird flying isolated and the horizon line is not touching either of these things. So it's a very deliberate, methodical way to capture. And we have something similar here where we've got this lovely stream leading us. So not only do we have depth, but all of these things have nicely separated themselves from the other bits. And then use color adjustments for better composition. This is, let's go to Robert's image where the tan gentleman, I'm going to guess that you did some color adjustment, Robert, in this, because the orange and that blue, the orange of the young man, the tanness of his skin is just, they're so complementary and they work so well together. Mm-hmm. So if you have, it can be worthwhile to pull up a color wheel and look at it and try to adjust your colors so that you're going to have, better complements within your image.
Definitely.
And I think it's the last, light is key. I mean, this is huge. And one of my picks for an inspirational photographer, I think, and Dave McKay does this as well, just uses light so fantastically. And some of it is teased out in the editing process to really make sure you're seeing the light in the dark. But it's just very true that light is so much of that. Definitely.
Yeah. It's amazing when you see an image that where there is some little glint of light or something that's just, that's just adding that little bit of drama to the photo that, it could be a beautiful scene, but if everything's just flat, you kind of lose some of the essence of what was great about it. So.
Yeah. And then the last one, find a deeper connection, which, I think can be seen in some as a little like, what does that mean? But, explain it. It's about shooting what makes you happy. And I do feel like a lot of times it's very easy to kind of try to chase Instagram growth and try to chase some other photographers. And you can certainly be inspired by them. But really, ultimately, if you're not shooting what you love and what speaks to you, you're going to be faking it, and that's going to be tiresome. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you want to read more of this and see those pictures in better detail. It's on Petapixel, linked in the show notes right down below. And you should certainly follow Christian on Instagram. He's a fantastic photographer and really, really nice guy as well.
Awesome.
I'll just mention this real quick. On1 just announced this week that they have now a 360 program, which is basically Lightroom's kind of online connectivity, but their system is much more affordable. So if you're looking for an alternative to Lightroom and Adobe, On1 Raw has been a strong competitor for many years. And now with phone apps, with a phone app from and for Android and iPhone users, this becomes, for those people who want to have the whole system kind of connected, a viable alternative that you might want to consider checking out. I've got the On1 app installed. I've been using it a little bit. Seems nice. It's hard to pull me away from Snapseed. I actually don't even use Lightroom Mobile. David, do you edit in Lightroom Mobile on your phone or?
No, it's mostly Snapseed or just the iPhone, the photos. It's usually Snapseed. If I'm really going to edit, it's usually Snapseed.
Yeah. And I don't, there's nothing I have against Lightroom Mobile other than it used to be really buggy. And now, and maybe I should stop calling it Lightroom Mobile too, because it is Lightroom just CC now. I just really enjoy Snapseed.
Well, and there's a thing about like Lightroom. I always just think of Lightroom as what it is on my desktop, and or on my laptop. When I go to my phone, everything's just a different language, it feels like. And I just don't even think to go to Lightroom or Photoshop. Although I know that Adobe's making some pretty great strides along with Apple and with some other manufacturers to really make the mobile platform work better. Like the new iPad Pro and Photoshop seems to work pretty well. But I'm just not there yet, And so when I'm opening my phone, I'm like, well, Snapseed, I just know does cool things for phones. And that's what I end up using most of the time.
Yeah. Pretty nice. And kind of related to that, I wanted to mention last week we talked a lot about Mac updates and, my struggles for finding a laptop that's going to work well for me, and the fact that Apple has announced that they're leaving the Intel chips. And I know this is getting a little bit nerdy, but we already talked about the map stuff. So let's just stay nerdy.
Yeah, let's stay nerdy. Yeah.
They're going to have their own chips and called Apple Silicon, but it's just ARM-based architecture, which that his system has been in server software and other kind of small computer systems for many, many years. They're going to be really powerful. coming later this year and sometime next year. It seems like Apple's going to switch entirely over to it. And one of the points we didn't mention is the fact that mentioned as part of their keynote, iPad and iOS apps will now run natively on your Mac with this new architecture, which I think is pretty big news, especially for photographers, because there are some really good iPad photo editing apps, that aren't made by Adobe.
Right.
And they're like $5-6, maybe $20.
Yeah. And
so being able to use those with full mouse and keyboard support for editing your images as an alternative to Adobe, which, if you're $10 a month, that's get kind of expensive.
Right.
So I think that's interesting. So
definitely.
And then one correction, we talked a little bit about RAW versus JPEG last week. And the one thing that I didn't mention that I want to make sure is that it is just a reminder that JPEG, every time you save, is throwing away a little bit of information. And I don't really think about that as a Lightroom user, because when you're in Lightroom working on any image, you're always working on top of it, not the actual file. And that doesn't matter if it's RAW or JPEG, you're still working on top of it. Mm-hmm. But if you're not working in Lightroom and you open that JPEG, you make some changes to it and you save it. And then later you're like, I want to re-edit it. You open it up, you make some changes to it and you save it. You are going to be throwing away a little bit of information each time, and it's going to slowly degrade over time. There's some great fun art experiments people have done over there, out there, where they like constantly edit, and you end up with a pile of mush at the end.
I want to do that sometime, to where it gets down to there's 1 pixel left.
Pixel. Yeah.
See what color it is.
just brown. It'd be, it's the same thing when like you're a kid. Yeah. You're like, what happens if I mix pink and blue and green and yellow?
Yeah.
It never makes some magical color. No. It just
right.
It was fun though. MKBHD, Marquez Brownlee, did an interesting experiment where he uploaded the same video to YouTube 1,000 times. So he uploaded it, downloaded it, uploaded it.
Wow. Okay.
Because YouTube compresses too. I mean, obviously.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah.
The quality you all get isn't the quality of our faces. Don't look this beautiful. It's because of the image algorithm. Yeah. So that's interesting to watch that experiment as well.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to the part of the show. I think. Oh wait, no. Let's tease a couple pieces of gear. First off, this in this backpack. Before we get to our photographers that inspire us, this came in for testing this week, and it is the Mavic Air 2. Sitting in this little running backpack with its controller and spare batteries. The batteries fit. I have it right now, just right inside here. But the batteries fit in the spot where the little gel waters are supposed to go. So I can go around and carry this. And I've flown this for, a couple of days now. It arrived last week. And my immediate reaction is, as a fairly recent purchaser of the Mavic Pro 2, and somebody who had that on loan from DJI forever and has taken it all over the world in the last 18 months, I'm really hard pressed to come up with reasons to get the Mavic Pro 2 over this. This does just about everything. Really, you could argue that it doesn't have the top sensors and it doesn't have the side sensors. So if you're making a lot of use of active track and you're worried about it running into something, then yeah. And of course, the Mavic Pro 3 is coming out sometime later this year or maybe early next year. It's really hard to tell. Different rumors are flying around, and that will be amazing. But right now, this drone can do just about everything 99% of the population needs. And look, just its size is just
wow.
I mean,
now it's definitely larger than the Mavic Air, the original.
Yeah.
But okay, there it is. Okay,
yeah,
but not. But like you're getting that's a lot of power there.
Yeah, and the active tracking 3.0 is definitely improved. I rode around in a parking lot full of trees this morning, zipping in and out, and it just followed me really, really impressively.
That's cool.
So it's cool. I will say I was very excited about the updated remote being, this top design. After using it, I'm a little less excited. It is an improvement, but it's not magical. It's hard to pull this out. And then you still have to remember to do the cord first and unwrap that before you put your phone in it.
Okay.
And, it is definitely bulkier, but still overall quite impressive. And at its price point, I think $799, $999 for the Fly More combo, which gets you the extra batteries. And the fly time is really impressive. The image quality is fantastic.
The stuff you shared the other day was incredible. The little video clips you shared were amazing.
Yeah, really, really good.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah. So just, again, I do see some reasons for some people to get the Mavic Pro, especially the 3 will be a step up above this. But for almost all of us, this is an impressive little drone for the money. So I like that.
Awesome.
And then this arrived just yesterday. I haven't even actually put it on my camera yet. It's the Tamron 28-200 all-in-one lens for the Sony system. And I know a lot of people that go with the Sony system like that because it's smaller and lighter. And so to have one lens that is this is a pretty lightweight lens in this compact that's going to cover that range. And I think it costs $999-ish or somewhere right around there. I think a lot of people are going to be happy with this. Early reports I'm hearing from the reviewers I trust is quite positive. No, it's not going to be the sharpest or the fastest lens.
Right.
You're sacrificing some convenience. I liken it to like a minivan, which I'm a big fan of minivans, but they're not the fastest.
Me
they're
too.
Not the sexiest.
But they get stuff done, man. They just, minivans are
push
awesome.
That button and the doors just open. I love that.
Yeah. I love minivans.
Yeah. All right, we're going to start to wrap the show up with the segment that is the title segment of the show, and that is sharing some of our favorite photographers. And I think it's a question we get fairly commonly as photographers, who inspires you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, David, I don't know how you approach this, but for me, there was a couple people that were like right at the top of my list. I was like, yeah, this is who's on my list. And then there were a couple people where I thought for a little while. I looked at my Instagram feed. Who am I following? I had to think about it.
Sure.
The world is full of a lot of awesome photographers.
Yes.
And I think as we go through, we'll share exactly what appeals to us about this photographer. And I think sometimes it's very clear their images are just fantastic.
Right.
And we didn't do neither of us did anybody historical like Ansel Adams or Dorothea Lange, who I think are fantastic. And Ansel Adams, I don't think I ever work on a black and white and don't think some about his imagery.
Right. Absolutely.
So, but he also just feels like a cliche choice. Ansel Adams. Yeah. Anytime I'm taking a landscape photographer, I'm thinking about him a little bit.
Yeah.
But we both pick some folks that are alive and modern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're gonna run through yours first, David.
Okay.
Up first, let's just switch over to this. And up first, you got Joe Mcnally.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about Joe.
Yeah. So Joe, I was introduced to his photography when I first started getting into photography myself. I got to know a lot of the folks from the whole Kelby world, Kelby One, and just kind of had the band that I was in. There were a couple of guys who were fans of the band and worked for Scott Kelby, and one of the guys who became a dear friend was Joe's main assistant for a number of years, and so I was introduced to Joe's photography. And just, as I was starting to dive into portrait photography, I was just like so blown away with his use of light and expression, and just he's just obviously if you look at these images, he's just every bit a pro. And he's had multiple covers of National Geographic. He's just got some incredible stuff in his portfolio. And the thing that's really cool about Joe, he really inspired me to get into using lighting. And I use lighting when I'm doing portraiture. I use lighting 95% of the time. I or at least have it on hand because there's a big thing in the world of portrait photographers and like family photographers and stuff. There's this big thing about like, oh, I'm a natural light photographer. Oh, I like to shoot in natural light. And a lot of times I feel like that's really just people's way of saying, I don't know how to use a flash and I'm afraid to use it. Yep. And I just love that he is not afraid to use it. And in some of these shots, he uses like 10 speed lights and you would never know it. It's just the way the thing is lit so well. And then in some it's one, but he's so good at it. And, that shot right there, I guarantee you there are speed lights outside that window coming in. It's not just daylight. He just does stuff like that all the time, and it doesn't look like there's any extra light.
Right.
It just looks natural.
Right.
But that's a gift. So
yeah, he's masterful. He also is a really nice guy. I've seen him speak at, I think, PPI or something in New York or something. And just the way he teaches and the way he comes across is just fantastic. Yeah,
incredible guy. And I've actually had the chance to meet him a couple times, which was a real honor. And
nice.
He just he's just an inspiration.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. You know what? Let's switch back and forth. Let's
do that. That's fine. I'll be quicker with my next one too.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I'm putting Nick Page on my list. We've talked about him off and on. It's funny. He lives in the state. He and I have talked a good bit. I haven't ever met him personally though. And his work is somebody who not only, the way he captures light, and I know he edits. He's got a lot of great tutorials on editing, in fact. But his work doesn't look to me like it's been edited, other than it's just beautifully done. And just really, really a consistently fantastic photographer. There's some of these guys we look at and I go, yeah, okay, he's creating great images, but maybe he's only posting one a month or everything. No, Nick has got like every other day or every day he just posts a fantastic image, and they're just consistently really good looking.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some people that have been on his workshops and say that he's just super duper nice too. He's a great guy. And masterful use of depth in this image too here.
Absolutely.
Which I saw him talking about this image somewhere else, and this is focus stacked. I think it was on his Instagram story. So he's well worth, if you enjoy landscape photography, I think that Nick is just somebody to really worthwhile to follow. And his wave images from Iceland are just
amazing. Wow.
Yeah. Actually, some of these might be Oregon coast. Some of them are Oregon coast. Some of them are Iceland. And just very consistent, beautiful style that speaks to me.
It's cool. He takes things that you would probably see with your naked eye and go like, well, I'm not going to take a picture of that. And then he takes it and he turns it into a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Very good stuff. Nice, Nick. All right, let's switch over. You've got Paul Nicklin.
Yep. Yeah, Paul Nicklin, 6.6 million followers. He's kind of like one of the biggest names right now in photography. National Geographic, and he's got his group Sea Legacy, which is doing great things for the environment and for, wildlife all around the world, just really trying to preserve these incredible creatures. And Paul Nicklin, he will go anywhere to get an amazing shot of an animal. And, he'll dive down into the depths of the Antarctic waters to get an incredible shot of a leopard seal, like coming right at you with its jaws wide open. That's just, a lot of times what separates, just a truly phenomenal photographer from somebody who's average or even somebody who's really good is where they're willing to go and, what kind of risk they're willing to take. And obviously he's worked up enough of a repertoire and just a reputation, I guess, to be hired to go to these places and to have probably just the reason to go. But my gosh, some of the images he captures are just breathtaking. Look at this. It's just unreal. It's
they really are good. Fantastic. And I'm just glad you point out that the project that he works with, he's using his superpowers for good.
Absolutely.
Which, I just really respect, and just, fantastic images. Very nice.
It's wonderful.
We're going to switch from animals to architecture. Sui O. I first heard about her through David McKay because she took the McKay's learn your camera class. I can't remember when. I don't know if Dave McKay is still on with us. 2012, 2014, somewhere a while ago. And then somehow, not somehow, but she just has taken that and run with it and become this master photographer. And I love her style and the way that she sees the architecture work, and just really, really fantastic work that I love. I just love it.
Yeah, that's really great. You got to just appreciate somebody who can just see something out there, either in nature or, architecture, and just get the vision to do something with it,
Yeah. Yeah. And she's apparently a very good portrait photographer as well. Love the light in these scenes here, along with all of this architecture. Very nice.
Very
All right.
cool.
Next up, you've got Keith Lozinski. And I hadn't heard of this guy. Clearly, he's been around a bit. He's got a few followers.
Yeah, he was another Nat Geo photographer that somehow just showed up in my feed. It was probably somebody that, through the Paul Nicklin thing, just maybe I found him, but he's just constantly posting some really great stuff. I mean, and just these moments that are just so cool. He's been all over the world, obviously, and captures these storm shots. And I mean, his work speaks for itself, but I just, every time I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed and his images pop up, I'm just like, wow. It makes me mad sometimes because I see these guys like him and like Joe McNally and like, essentially we all have the same gear. I mean, pretty much, just about everybody in this forum has pretty much the same gear, respectively to be able to pull this stuff off. Maybe we don't have 800 millimeter lenses and stuff like that, but we have some pretty nice stuff. So it's clearly not about the gear. It's about talent and just being able to see things. And that's why I encourage people to just keep going for it. Cause like you could do this if I mean, everyone's got a different level of talent and a different eye, but like, don't let the gear be the thing that's holding you back from being great.
Yeah. I agree. All right. I've got Renan. I don't know how to say his last name. Ozturk, I think. And he caught my eye. I've been following him since about 2010 in his various ways. He's both a photographer and a videographer. And what really caught my attention was there was a Sony announcement. Oh, we've added this guy to our Sony collective list. And they linked to his behind the scenes of this Myanmar mountain climbing expedition. And I can't find it now, though, which is a little frustrating. I can find references of it, and it's on National Geographic behind a paywall. But his behind the scenes part of it, I'm not sure. I can't find that. But they started in the jungles and traversed through this crazy terrain to get to these mountains. So they started in like 100-degree heat. They have all of this mountain climbing equipment, and he is documenting all of this with both photos and videos. And his photography and his videography is very, very good. But it is similar, kind of what you said to like the fact of getting out there into this adventure. And and in no way am I comparing a McKay trip to their expedition, but when I'm documenting what we're doing on McKay trips and trying to manage the amount of footage and keep batteries charged, and we're staying in hotels or on an expedition ship, and he is like in a mud hut in the middle of nowhere, hooking up to charge batteries to some old car battery. It's just fascinating to me that with all of that going on, he tells awesome stories.
It's incredible. That's what's just that's what amazes me when you see people who are they're just human beings like us with cameras, but they just are able to do something that it's pretty unbelievable. And I mean, yeah, and I've thought the same thing. Like when we go on the McKay trips and we have an amazing time and we see such incredible things, but because of the group dynamic and just the way we operate, we're not always able to get like on the ground in Tanzania and like shoot low, like who's the photographer I'm thinking of right now. But there's another photographer who just does these.
Corey Richards? Is that Corey Richards?
No. Why am I drawing a blank? But he, David Yarrow or something like that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It just, you just see like, oh my gosh, I was in that same place. How come I didn't get that shot? Well, we were in a different situation, but it just makes you want to go for it, and strive for that.
Yeah. So, well, really a cool dude, worth following, I think.
Very cool.
And just, I love him.
That's awesome.
All right. Your last pick. Did we both pick 5? 1, 2, 3. Or you got 4, and I have 5.
I think I had 4. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I got 4 too. Art Wolfe.
Yeah, Art Wolfe. So I saw him on Tales by Light, which is a Netflix series. It's a really cool series. If you guys aren't watching this, it's a great. If you're a photo nerd and but also if you kind of have a bigger vision than just photography, you just if you've been on a McKay trip, if you love traveling or anything like that, Tales by Light has some really great episodes that they will really inspire you. And Art Wolfe has a couple episodes dedicated to him, and where he just, he's out shooting what you see right here, and he's just got a great eye, and then he does some really amazing like portraiture work in these villages and remote parts of the world. So it's not just wildlife, but he's pretty fantastic.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, I love his work. And my last, Sam Hurd. I am the Sam. He is a wedding photographer, and I love him for his use of kind of interesting foreground elements. Yeah. And he has pioneered shooting through prisms in a way that I shouldn't say he has pioneered it, but I feel like he has made it really interesting. And it seems like something that could be gimmicky, but I love the way he's done it, and I haven't seen anybody else.
Yeah.
I first learned about him, again, back in 2009 or 2010. He had taken a workshop with Christina, who was in a workshop with Ryan Brennazier, who is a very good wedding photographer as well. And way back then, he was creating some neat stuff, but it was cool that he was in this workshop where he's learning as well. And he's just gone on and photographed some amazing people and built this business on very interesting photography. And I noticed as I was going through his feed that he's got these images, and I think they're just Photoshop. But I love, that's just kind of cool. It's kind of, and it's even more interesting, I think, when something like this.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah. And see, people are asking, I don't know how he's done these. My guess would just be Photoshop, but he's not the kind of guy to just do something in Photoshop if he can figure out a way to do it in real life. So I'm curious. I could be wrong.
Wow, interesting.
But he's got a style there.
Well, it's definitely stuff that you're like, how do you think of that? That's just cool. Like, yeah. It's incredible. Visually
arresting images.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So I hope folks, you found some useful in there. I think we both shared some folks that probably some of you have heard about, but it's nice to kind of put out there a list. I will put these in the show notes, links to their Instagram right after this show is over. And we'll get those out to you all. And the chat room, if you haven't been, I'm sorry, I haven't been looking as I've been controlling the screen, but I hope you've been sharing some that really speak to you. If not, go ahead now, stick in the chat, or if you're watching this after the fact, in the comments, what is a photographer, especially an undersung photographer, that really you think is doing some awesome work and you'd love more people to know about? Feel free to put those in the links.
Anyone like Toby Gelston, David Carr, Discouraged, David McKay, Allie McKay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's answer a couple quick questions and then we're all done today. So Robert Forehand says, hey, geotagging locations leads to overcrowding of locations? Yes? ? Good question. First off, I do geotag all of my photos, mostly for my own searching of them in Lightroom. And also, as I showed in Google Photos later in the fact, being able to see them on a map and remembering where they are and being able to kind of get back to them. Any picture that is a really epic picture, I make sure I do precisely geotag. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to share that with the world with its precise location. And that's something, Nick Page, those of you who follow him notice he tags almost all of his images Mesa Arch in a goal to kind of disrupt the feed, because we've talked about this on a previous show. That whole idea of like an image tagged with a location, and then everybody literally tramples to that location and tries to get the same shot. I'm not for sharing locations, sharing precise locations of quieter, out of the way spots. I think it is a good idea to keep those to yourself. But locations that are built to handle, like something in Yosemite National Park, I am totally fine with tagging a very precise location, or just tagging Yosemite National Park. I don't know, Carr, do you have any opinions on that?
To be honest, I haven't really done a whole lot of geotagging, mainly because I'm too lazy to figure it out. But I do like, as we talked about that in that previous episode, it does make sense. I don't think we need to, encourage over populating areas that need to be left quiet and need to be left more serene, and just there's a respect for nature, there's a respect for other people. I mean, it's cool that we can do it. I just think, I don't know. I'm kind of with you there. I just think we need to be careful about it.
Yeah. And if you found some quiet, out of the way spot, and you post pictures and everybody's like, oh my God, where is it? You have to tell me. You don't have to. And I think you're probably better off not telling people. They can go find it on their own if they really want to. But again, for spots that are set up inside national parks or with big overlooks or a road that goes right to it, then I think it's fine. Do you use location tagging when you post to Instagram, David?
Sometimes I will, yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know when I've done that, if it's uncool or what. I don't know. Sometimes I do just to tag the place, just so that they see that I've posted a photo of it. But I don't know. I should probably dive a little deeper into that and see, what's the best way to do it. So
yeah, from the standpoint of growing your Instagram, it's very good. And again, I think it's fine if it's a location that is, like Horseshoe Bend. Horseshoe Bend is set up to accept 5,000 people, tromping on the trail that they've made. So I think that's fine. Sure. Yeah. Kevin O'Gara wants to know, he is currently running Sierra on his iMac. He heard there were issues with Catalina and Lightroom and Photoshop. Is that still true, or should he upgrade to Catalina now? Have you upgraded, David?
Yes, I'm Catalina on both my machines.
I am now too. Yeah.
My wife. So a few episodes back, you might remember me, like I had put a new keyboard in my wife's computer and a new battery. Well, all around that time, I upgraded her. She has a MacBook, just like it's not a MacBook Air or Pro. It's just a MacBook from 2016 or whatever. But I put Catalina on it and it messed it up.
Ooh.
Yeah, she was having all kinds of issues where like Mail just kept running, and in the background it was doing something, just like cranking the CPU up. So I actually had to go back and downgrade it back to El Capitan or whatever. So I'm not saying maybe it's better now, but it was just like, ugh. But my computers have worked fine so far.
Yeah, there were issues. I know. I am running Lightroom and Photoshop on both the laptop when it's not crashing. That's separate than Catalina. I actually upgraded to Catalina and hoped that it would make the Mac laptop crash less. It didn't make it crash less or more. That's the same. And my iMac, I upgraded to Catalina. I don't remember when. Not too long ago. I just kind of forgot that it was available. And I have had no problems with Photoshop or Lightroom. So I would say it is probably safe now, at least as far as Lightroom Photoshop goes.
I think it probably is.
The mail side of things.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It might have been just some peculiar glitch, just on her computer. But whatever it was frustrating enough that I figured out how to downgrade it. So,
nice. I want to thank Timmy Scott. Saw him at a socially distance appropriate little get together the other night, and he handed me this little photography Arctic Explorer. He even has a telephoto lens. Look at that.
That's awesome.
So now, man, I'm set. I got my drone dude. I've got my photography dude. And and he even gave me a little penguin with him. Isn't that the cutest?
Oh, yeah.
Super
That's amazing.
Cute. So Timmy, thank you for that. I'm looking forward to using those guys in pictures in the future. And then I just mentioned, so I'll just say, this is that Dell laptop that I have been using for the last week. And it's really nice. I bought this used. It's last year, I believe. It's last year's XPS 13. It's 2.5 pounds. It's so lightweight.
Wow.
It is nice and snappy. And I love that it powers USB-C. The one thing that I said in that video that I put out about, I'm looking for the perfect laptop, I didn't want to deal with dingle dongles. So, I definitely still have to do that with this one. I have to have this thing with me for HDMI out and for a proper SD card slot, proper USBs. And if I forget this or lose it, I'm not going to be able to share anything over a TV for teaching and things like that. But gosh, it's lightweight. The screen is gorgeous.
Cool.
And overall, I paid about $1,200 for it. So I'm pretty happy with that. And we'll see how long I'm happy with Windows. Honestly, it's been totally fine. I think the hardest thing is getting used to the keyboard shortcut locations, copy and paste, and reaching for a different key than I'm typically reaching on my Macs. And there's, you go ahead.
You'll get used to it. I mean, I think I haven't messed with a PC in so long that I mean, like, I'm really not as much of an Apple snob as I might appear to be. It's just what I use, and I don't want to switch because everything in my house is Apple. So,
well, that's the thing. What I started to say is it is a really nice ecosystem, and the way all of the different machines work together. Like, now that I do have Catalina on both my iMac and the laptop, the fact that I can easily bring up pages from one to the other.
Yeah.
And if you have the phones as well, it's really, really nice. Apple's done a fantastic job there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a catch-22 because you've got the ecosystem that is very like closed, and they don't let a lot of stuff into it, and that's great, except that it's closed and they don't let a lot of stuff into it. So, I mean, for some people that's a real turnoff, but when you kind of just accept that and just adopt that platform, you just kind of stick with it. But I'm certainly, like, to me, whatever it takes to get it done, I don't care. I don't care what you use. Like, that's the whole like Canon Nikon rivalry. It's fun to joke about, but I really don't care. Like, they all get great things done. It's just what you do with it. So
yeah, well said. It's what you do with it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks. I think that's it. We're done. If you haven't already, take a moment, hit that thumbs up button. Really appreciate that. As you said, I've seen in the chat room, folks are leaving comments about photographers that are interesting to them. If you're watching this after the fact, please stick those in the comments as well. And if you have topics that you would like to see us address in the future, bigger ones or smaller ones, so you just put those in the comments as well. No show next week. David Carr and I actually are doing a little traveling. We have a carefully socially distant workshop. And but we will, or at least I will, David Carr, I'll check in with you. We'll be back the following week after that.
That's right.
All right, everybody. And also don't forget, you can follow David Carr at David Carr_photo.
That's
all right. David, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks again, as always, Toby. And thanks all of you for your comments and your encouragement, and encourage one another. That's what it's all about. So thank you guys.
All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Take care.